Hello, hello, hello. Wait, let's make sure everyone can see me because for some reason it's saying the bit rate is kind of weird. So let me know if you can see me, if you can hear me. Can everyone see me and hear me? Oh, I see. Hey, okay, so I'm people can see me and hear me. Okay. Whoa. What a month September has been. Has it not? Maybe this is just me personally, but feel free to share in the comment section about your month of September. It feels like it's just been, I don't even know. I'm still processing everything. I'm still processing everything. And I just want to give a shout out to everyone who is in here who has been so kind, not just towards me, but towards everyone within the community. It's just been really nice to see. And I'm not going to lie, it's definitely keeping me going because there is a lot of pushback, obviously, on, my, I guess, evolved version of myself. And I just want to say that, I'm really hoping, if anything, that these streams give you some type of reassurance that you can evolve and that there are people there for you when you do. And those that are not, there's nothing you can really do about that. But to never turn your back on you becoming more you. You know what I mean? Maybe that sounds ridiculous, but it makes sense to me. And it's been a pretty hard journey. And I'm still kind of taking it one step at a time. And there's a lot of conviction that comes along with that, and courage and bravery and feeling extremely uncomfortable. But I wouldn't trade this for the world. I really wouldn't. I'm happy with what I am becoming, and I hope you are too. And if you're not, then that's when we kind of alter some things, right? And we go into our cocoon and we figure out what it is that we're wanting to become. But I really hope that you're loving the you that you are right now and the you that you are becoming, and that you support that version of yourself, even if other people reject it. I really do hope that you support yourself, and I hope that you find the community that supports that as well. And so I just wanted to start this with that. And then going into a topic that I've really been wanting to talk about for quite a while, which has been this Justin Baldoni, Blake Lively public lawsuit, or lawsuits, many lawsuits. And, I have my own experience outside of It Ends With Us when it comes to Blake Lively, because within the movie, my abuser's music is featured in it. And when I realized that, obviously it's activating and obviously it's extremely triggering, and you're like, what's going on here? This is a film that's supposed to be about being a survivor, and here is an individual who, broomed me at 16, his music featuring in it, and for a good long moment within the film. And I mean, this is what comes along with also being a survivor in the public landscape or the public figure landscape, where you sadly are going to have to see the person who harmed you showing up on screen, at festivals, sponsorships, you know, you really name it. David. Hi, David. Oh, David Kaplan. I'm so happy you're back. I support your journey, and in the future, if you have another child, you can name them Justice. God bless you. Wait, David, that's David, that's amazing. That actually made me smile so big. That's so funny. Thank you so much, David, for the support. And I really, let me heart that actually. Justice is the next baby. From truth to justice, from Nova to truth to justice. And Nova actually means new, like, you know, renewal. And so it's really interesting to see the trajectory of that. If there is a third child, I'm going to be thinking about that, David Kaplan. Thank you so much for that. Okay, so what I was saying was, when you're in these public landscapes, and sometimes the survivor is not a public figure, right? But the person who harmed them is. And then sometimes both individuals are public figures. And something that I've seen time and time again is survivors with public figure ABUSERS, they are sadly having to be reminded of them constantly. And that is why I fought so strong, honestly, you know, in the beginning stages of e-predators, for them not to necessarily be financially rewarded for what they're being accused of, right? Because I understood, I really did understand what that probably signals to the person who is potentially causing harm, and then what that does to the survivor who is having to witness that on and on and on and on again. And so with It Ends With Us, you know, it wasn't the first time, obviously. You know, another example, I was on my honeymoon a couple years ago, and I was shopping for some gifts to bring back. And I was in the shop, and then my abuser's music came on, and I had to leave. And then there's been times where I've been at restaurants where my abuser's music is playing, and I have to walk outside and go like this. I mean, you can ask my husband, many friends of mine, and I have to be like this outside. And then my husband has to go up to them and ask them to change the song. And this is a reality for survivors in this very public landscape that sadly sometimes it doesn't get as respected, because obviously there are so many survivors that don't have somebody who harmed them who is a public figure. So they're dealing with things very differently, with like very little to no support whatsoever. And I do just want to start this with some type of at least respect towards those who do have to deal with somebody who has harmed them and having to see them on billboards or see them on a Spotify playlist or see their music in a movie. You know, regardless of what we can say about how we feel about celebrities, for people on the other side of their harm, it is a very real reality that alters their day and changes their mood, obviously, and activates them. And I don't think it should be minimized. I think regardless of obviously all the different ways somebody can be a survivor within the entertainment industry, outside of the entertainment industry, I believe that both need to be equally respected and understood. And again, that goes back to obviously with what I was talking about the other day when I was talking about Drake Bell and how that impacted, and that wasn't my intention. And I do just want to say once again, I acknowledge that. And I understand what my impact was, even though my intention wasn't that. My intention was not to enable any further harm. It was to enable recovery and to change that. But with that said, that kind of made me start off on like not the best footing when it came to Blake Lively and It Ends With Us, because then I saw a video of her where she said she picked the playlist. And I was like, you picked the playlist? And like, what does that mean? I was hoping maybe Justin Baldoni picked the playlist just because that would be an easier, like, of course he did. But she was saying she did, and that she approved of every song that was in the film, from my knowledge. And I posted that on my Instagram. And that was really hurtful. That, because it's one Google search away, right? And I think he was like number 2 on the Spotify playlist, Michael Milos Rai. And it was deeply disheartening to experience that. And then I had to think to myself, well, all this stuff is happening with her and Justin Baldoni. Do I say something? Because I don't necessarily want to put myself in the way of obviously what she's saying. And here comes with this complexity, right? There's a chance that maybe she didn't know. Who knows, right? But it shouldn't deter from her own personal story and what she's coming forward with. So it gave me a little bit of like, I don't know what to do. But I feel like I had to do what I had to do, which was talking about it and making it known that did hurt me, and that I don't really necessarily feel like that's okay, especially when it comes to a film that is about a survivor. It just felt very hypocritical and it felt very bizarre. And then obviously the rollout started to happen with Blake Lively. And I'll never forget, I remember it was like in the middle of the night when the New York Times article came out about Blake Lively and these crisis managers. And seeing the quote of burying her. You're just like, to be honest with you, I was not surprised. Sadly, this is the entertainment industry. This is how they do seem to talk to one another. And one major key thing to remember is it's a business. No matter what we're going to say about this, it is a business. There are people making money on this side, and then also in between, right? It's not even just, then you got like media making money in the in-between and on ad space or clicks, etc. And there's a booming industry around these very sensitive topics. And I've learned a lot throughout the years when it comes to crisis managers. One of them being that, a lot of these crisis managers, they might think they're fighting the good cause, right? They might think like, oh, the evidence that my client is giving me, I'm feeling like this person is being misunderstood or not being properly evaluated. And so I do want to start this video before we dig into more. It's not to say that these crisis managers are these big evil, like goblins or villains per se. They are obviously always human. And what I have seen is that they don't necessarily know when they are on the wrong side of things. And they are getting huge paychecks. They're making tons of money. Some of them are making over $100,000, right? From just one client. I mean, think about that. Imagine making over $100,000 a month. And then on top of that, you have your own bias, like viewpoint of this, and then you're seeing what your client is giving you, and you might even believe you're on the right side of things. And we see it on the internet. Happens a lot. We'll see people on the internet who say a bunch of things, and they're so dedicated to what they're saying on the internet, and they believe it because they're listening to somebody that they look up to, or a musician that they love listening to, right, etc. But they might not be necessarily on the right side of things. And it's not to excuse their behavior, but it is to kind of at least acknowledge that they're human. So I do want to start this with they're human. They're human. They're real people. They have their own set of values, lives, experiences, and that's going to guide them into the current moment that we might be criticizing. And we need to also acknowledge that. And that's something that I really wanted to change since last year, is to acknowledge that, because we have to. And that doesn't mean that we ignore harm or behavior that is harmful or not right. It just means that we allow these people to be human beings, and we allow ourselves to look at the broader scope of the systemic issue here when it comes to these industries, these corporate institutions, for example. And so over the summer, I had I don't know if anyone knows about John Vaccaro, but John Vaccaro is a individual who, in my opinion, has been spying on me. And I have, evidence of him surveilling me, my stories with my children. And this goes way back. But one of the most, maybe Melanie, you can put a link in the chat when it comes to me talking about John Vaccaro being connected to my stalker. And what was really scary about this is way, way before anyone knew who my stalker was. This was a long time ago, many years ago. And I got notice of, hey, who are these people that this individual is following? Who do they know? And looking into it, I end up finding that John Vaccaro, this name with NFT underneath it, and it was a verified account, is following my stalker. But then not only just following my stalker, but following a anonymous account using my photo that is my stalker's, where it was just a hate account. And it was awful, just spreading defamatory, information. It was extremely, extremely harmful. And I'm like, wait, why is this person, John Vaccaro, following my stalker's personal account and then this hate account of his that he created? Then when I clicked on him, I realized a lot of his posts were Dan Schneider. I'm like, wait a minute. Nobody knows who my stalker is, really, at this point at all. This is before Guess Who. This is before everything. He knows who he is personally, not just not just following the hate account, which maybe would kind of make sense, right? Because he's friends with Dan Schneider, and I'm sure that Dan Schneider doesn't like me that much. But actually following his personal accounts. Terrifying. And obviously this person is extremely dangerous. And so as I looked into him, I'm like, who is this person? Why is he following him? Then I realized he's following me. Dan Schneider's best friend is following me and following ePredators, following me on Instagram, following me on Twitter. In my opinion, surveilling me. Watching me. For who? Obviously Dan Schneider. And we really see evidence of this later in the recent court filings. But it was mind-blowing to me. I'm not going to lie. I didn't think that. I thought these crisis managers or these fixers in Hollywood, for example, at the very least would use these anonymous accounts. You know what I mean? And have fake faces and fake pages. John Vaccaro was using his verified accounts, not even only on Twitter, on X, but on Instagram as well. And I realized what it made me feel like. And what it made me feel like was sending a message to me. He didn't want to necessarily be hidden. It was like to let me feel that Dan Schneider, somebody who is honestly, he dodges accountability at all costs, in my opinion, and created for me, at least personally, childhood trauma. And I think for others as well, we've learned along the way, to let me know he's watching me and he's watching my children. I mean, these are posts of my children he's watching. I know what you're going to think. There's a lot of victim blamers. Well, then don't post your children. You know, let's get real. It's still inappropriate and insane that somebody who is extremely close to Dan Schneider is using their verified accounts to look at my stories and to look at what I'm up to and following a person who is restrained, a dangerous person to me and my family, following that account. What is the connection there? You know, I could only at sometimes get a little bit what others would call paranoid, but you would too if this was happening to you. You connect enough dots, right? And you go, well, enough coincidences kind of seem to equal a plan. Doesn't seem like it's a coincidence after a while when everything's connecting and it's all together with evidence, you know? So fast forward though. I would sometimes obviously see who was looking at my stories, and I didn't see John Vaccaro for a while. And then when my stalker's restraining order got renewed, all of a sudden John Vaccaro is looking at my Instagram stories again with his verified account. I'm like, hold on. What is the connection, right, with him and my stalker? It's really just an honest question, because a lot of the misinformation in the beginning and these conspiracy theories around e-predators and me, you know, dating back, really stemmed from this person who is now and has been for a while now restrained. And this person who is restrained did not come into my life until after the first Nickelodeon protest. And I know what you might, you know, survivors sound paranoid a lot of the time, and you know, you got to bear with them because obviously there's trauma there, and there are things that are happening in their life that are leading them to see patterns now. Their brain's like trying to protect them from anything happening again, and it's connecting dots, right? And so I'm like, what the hell is going on? Why is he now all of a sudden watching my stories again with his verified account in regards to my stalker? And I've told him on multiple occasions to unfollow me. I've told him many times. I've messaged him to stop looking at me. And he doesn't seem to care. And that doesn't shock me with somebody who's friends with Dan Schneider. Dan Schneider didn't seem to care either about crossing boundaries at all. In my personal experience of him. And when I looked deeper into John Vaccaro, I realized he worked for Nickelodeon. I'm like, what? He's a website builder. You're like, okay, so he's also connected to Nickelodeon. Not even just to Dan Schneider. He's connected to Nickelodeon. He's a past employee of Nickelodeon. So with that being said, fast forward, I see in the news that John Vaccaro has made a declaration to the court. Now, remember, I just thought he was just friends with Dan Schneider. I didn't know, like, if he was hired still by Dan Schneider. You know, I didn't know any of that. I was just feeling that this person who is best friends with Dan Schneider is surveilling me, watching what I'm doing. Nicotine time. Fast forward, I find out there's a declaration that was written by John Vaccaro in regards to Dan Schneider's lawsuit against Maxine Productions for the documentary. And within that declaration, he says that he's currently hired by Dan Schneider and has been paid over $30,000 working for him currently. And guess what he's doing? He's acting as a crisis manager, a PR person. You're like, at the very least, Dan Schneider, wouldn't you hire somebody who uses an anonymous account? I mean, that's really what all these trolls do anyways, that surveil me and many other survivors that come forward about this industry or about their abusers, etc. But John Vaccaro is loud and proud about surveilling Dan Schneider's, the children who he created childhood trauma with. I mean, the audacity and the nerve of this industry to do that. And it really opened my eyes to what is a crisis manager? What exactly do they do? What is their position? How much are they making? What is their allegiance to this individual? Do they believe this person? What evidence are they given before they start working for this person? And to be honest with you guys, what I've seen personally is they're taking the money. Okay? These, what I think they consider asshole celebrities who get themselves in trouble and need these people to help them. They're like, it's another day at the office for them. It's another day at the office for them. They're just like, oh, I got to help this person. I'm getting paid X amount. And, this is enough evidence for me to see at least their narrative of what happened. And let's push their own personal narrative. Now, sometimes I think there are more sinister motives when it comes to these crisis managers. I don't think it's always just them going, well, I believe this person, so whatever. I think some of them like the challenge, or at least what I've seen, that they like the challenge of it. They like feeling like they have something to... It's like playing God, right? I mean, information and the way that now the internet misuses it and how misinformation spreads, you can really play God with these things. You can get somebody to think something is true that is not, and which is why I think my lawsuit is very important against Cat 10 Barge. And I hope more people read that complaint, because there's a broader scope that I'm trying to bring attention to, and not just the individuals at hand. But it's about how information travels and how people can play God now with people's lives. And you can say something and then another person thinks it's true, even without any evidence. And to be honest with you, how the internet is playing out now is how the crisis management industry has been playing out forever with legacy media. They're spin doctors, fixers. They alter the truth. They spin the truth. They manipulate the truth. And for who? Obviously for the person who is giving them a paycheck. The person who is giving them over $100,000 a month on a retainer, paying their bills, putting their kids through private school, right? Getting them that fancy car, all of those things. Crisis is making them money. And they might look away from some facts of their clients, because what they're being hired for is maintaining that person's image, maintaining what people saw of them originally, that they're still that person that people adore and love and saw in a film and was a great actor, great musician, you know, whatever. They're holding up a catastrophe for one individual. And this goes for, you know, a while ago, this was politicians for the most part, corporations, very, very, very wealthy individuals that, you know, actors, for example, back in the day were not that rich to get this type of crisis management. But now, obviously, with the Hollywood entertainment industry booming and how much money is around that, now these actors, musicians, etc., can get these types of retainers with crisis managers. And they handle it the same way they handle a corporation, which is stems from manufacturing consent. It stems from manipulating the truth, maybe sometimes with good intentions, where it's like we want. Maybe sometimes the person is innocent, right? I'm not trying to sit here and say that every single time somebody comes to a crisis manager that they're guilty as all hell and, you know, the crisis manager is just getting everybody to not see the truth. I don't believe that. I think there's obviously complexity here and we have to take notice of that. But still, their job is to restore them. Not recovery, not rehabilitation, not accountability, not transformative justice. No, no, no. It's to restore their image so that people can accept watching them again, so that their client can work again. And the better they are at that, the more they can charge what I think sometimes they consider an asshole. And in the beginning, I really thought for myself, like, oh, these people are, you know, they're enabling and they are on their side. And I've learned through other people's experiences and learning so much about this industry is that a lot of these people don't even like their fucking clients. It's just another day at the office. And so that also kind of altered my way of talking about these people, because I can't just call them villains, right? I can't just be like, you're enabling, you know, predatory behavior or you're whatever. No, there is obviously a human being there, but what exactly is that human being doing? And how can we make sure to safeguard and watch for this person's job impacting our own personal opinion about a person and altering it and manipulating our own minds about someone, about the facts of something? And you got to remember, the more you can, the more these people charge, they're really fucking good. They're real fucking good. I mean, they're pros at this. They know how to do it. They know how to get you to change your mind about them. They know how to get in your head. They know how to talk to media outlets, for example, and get them to carve things out of an article. I have an episode about that with Tony Feinberg. Yeah, Tony, you watching? Edendale Strategies. A lot to say about that guy. A lot to say about that guy. But I learned behind the scenes when it came to the Pitchfork article about Diplo is that Tony was hired for Diplo as a crisis manager. And remember, these crisis managers work with these lawyers. So they're not even necessarily talking to the client, the actual client that's hired them. They're strategizing with the legal team. And obviously, what I think is survivors deserve something like that, right? A team that strategizes for them about, you know, against all odds and knowing how the internet works and how to protect the survivor and make sure that their reputation stands true and that they're protected and honored. And you know what I mean? They have a support system, but usually it goes to the rich people. obviously, or the males, specifically the white males. And they had this whole team, and the crisis managers are strategizing with the law firms to make the case stronger, sometimes against the survivor. That's what their job is. And some of them think they're good people. Some of them think that they're helpers, that they're helping people. But who are they helping? What are they helping is really the main issue. And so it's really important for us when we're navigating online, which is why I've changed my whole perspective on how, you know, even I'm engaging online, is because these online tools that attract these bots from these crises, and just remember, guys, I've gone up against this is not a conspiracy. I have gone up against a lot of powerful individuals who all have crisis managers, and I know who they are. That's not what I'm going to talk about today. I know who you are, by the way. They have these really powerful crisis managers, and a lot of them do have these bot farms. And in their contracts, they are strategizing with websites like Reddit and Twitter and creating new conversations that go up against the person. That's literally what they're hired for. It's in their contracts. Okay? So adding to those dialogues that's why I now really also see them to be just extremely dangerous for the survivor, regardless of what we think. How are we participating? How are we participating with that? So, with that being said, I do want to read a little bit of John Vaccaro here. I do want to just show you how much he is getting paid and for what. Because it's just so, where are you? Quiet on set. Oh yeah, he works for Juicy Orange LLC. I always forget that he works for Juicy Orange LLC. Okay, which blah, 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 true and correct copies. Oh, here it is. Okay. Got it. I was like, it's definitely there. Why aren't I seeing it? Okay, look at this. John Vaccaro. Remember that Nickelodeon t-shirt? How many bots were attracted to that post? And remember, this guy's in the NFT field. I've learned a lot about Telegram and how a lot of these individuals can use Telegram to get people to say the same thing over and over again on a post. Oh my God, Melanie. Oh my God. Amazing. I love that my mom always ends up getting a membership. I love it. It's so good. It's so good. Hi, Mom. Okay, so check this out. There's Brad Pitt. Okay. I have performed press and public relations services for Schneider, directly relating to the trailer and Quiet on Set, including, but not limited to, it's like, what? Seeking redactions or corrections, see? And then sometimes you're like, okay, this makes sense, right? Because let's say some media outlet does say some misinformation about you. We learned this about the SO thing with Drake Bell. Regardless of what we think about Drake Bell, we don't want anybody having misinformation in there. It obviously will damage their life in ways that they're not necessarily deserving of, right? Because once we push for misinformation, I'm going to tell you right now, it will end up happening to you. And when it happens to you, it's not going to be as fun as going, haha, that guy fucking deserved it. Oh, hate that guy, whatever. When it happens to you, the more that we allow, it's a full circle. It will come back to us all eventually, which is why we have to be responsible in these communities. But okay, so apparently emanating from the trailer of Quiet on Set, made by various news publications, Juicy Orange has invoiced and been compensated by Schneider for an amount not less than $30,000 to date for this work. And we are continuing to perform such services. So he's still working for Dan Schneider, and he's surveilling me. And he says, I declare under penalty of perjury under the laws of the state of California that the foregoing is true and correct. And he literally, his whole thing, for the most part in his declaration, is looking at things online. And anytime Dan Schneider obviously pops up, and that's, you know, part of their job, is anytime something pops up that has their client's name, they're to flag it, divert it, deflect it, change it, manipulate it. And the person they're trying to persuade is you. That's who they're trying to persuade. And their main goal is to make that person who is opposing their client look like they're not credible. Like there's an alternative motive. Like there's something wrong with them. They're not well. They're in it for money. They're in it for this. They're a liar. They're this. Look at their past over here. Look what they did in 1998 or like whatever it is. That's their goal, is to get you to be distracted by what their client is being accused of. These are the contracts. But where does crisis management stem from? And let's kind of start with this. Like, what is crisis management, right? So it's the process by which a business or other organization deals with a sudden emergency situation, which obviously makes a whole lot of sense. You're like, a crisis happens. Let's say, I'm making up a ridiculous idea, but let's say a corporation like Nestle, where their candy bars or whatever were not sealed properly, and then all of a sudden kids were getting sick. You know, that would also be crisis management. It's obviously not just SA. It's obviously not just ABUSC. It can be a plethora of different things a corporation is dealing with. And obviously something I do want to be fair with is that when you are a major corporation or a celebrity, there are people going after you for certain things, right? There are shady people out there. We can't ignore that. You know, there are people with alternative motives. There are people, of course, out there in the world that maybe, you know, want money or fame or whatever. This does happen. It is a reality. But a crisis manager, for example, is to really drill that in, regardless if it's necessarily true, but to make you doubt the person accusing their client of something. So we get crisis management, but really, where does crisis management stem from? And it goes way back. And it's obviously going to be a little bit of a sad story here. So, you know, trigger warning. This is definitely not a good story that happened here, but it has to do with really the first time the world started to recognize how powerful and important to these powerful individuals a crisis manager could be. And it actually started with a massacre, which was April 20th, 1914. And this happened, and please forgive me if I'm not pronouncing this properly, but I think it's Ludlow, Colorado. Approximately 21 people were killed, primarily minors, wives, and children. And if you look into this, by the way, we're not going to be able to go fully into everything here today. So again, maybe take some notes if you want to look into something further past this stream, and you obviously have the stomach for it because some of this is obviously very activating. But if you do read this, it's going to teach you a lot. So this was John D. Rockefeller Jr., was a part owner of CFI and I, who had recently appeared before a United States congressional hearing on the strike. So basically, these miners were protesting. They were striking against the corporation that was exploiting them, not paying them, treating them like absolute shit. And we got Roosevelt's brother here, owning the company? Owning the company. They're striking. They want to be treated with respect and dignity. Makes complete sense. And you know what ends up happening to them? Well, per usual, they get punished. No good deed goes unpunished. You know that saying? I've really learned that to be true in the last couple years. No good deed does go unpunished. And that's exactly what happened here. He was widely blamed for having orchestrated the massacre. So now we have John D. Rockefeller, who we all know is just a greedy money guy. He's being accused of orchestrating the massacre. And to be quite honest with you, it seems about right. Why, when they were striking, did these people get brutally MURD? I can't even spell it right now. You know what I mean. How did this happen? Why did this happen? The massacre was a seminal event of the 1913 to 1914 Colorado Coalfield War, which began with General United Mine Workers of America's strike against poor labor conditions. Power to them. In CF and I's Southern Colorado coal mines, the strike was organized by miners working for the Rocky Mountain. So basically, you see what's happening. These individuals are being treated poorly by a corporation. They get punished for it. Children, wives, the miners end up dying, being killed. And obviously, who is everybody going to think did that? Who are they getting in the way of? They're getting in the way of this corporation making a bunch of money. So who do they end up hiring? Ivy Lee. Not to get mistaken with Ivy League, but Ivy Lee. So he was an American publicity expert and a founder of modern public relations. Lee is best known for his public relations work with the Rockefeller family. So his whole freaking job was to spin it. And you know what he did? Can't find it here. We don't have much time. But he made the Rockefellers into philanthropists. His idea was, you know what? You guys need to start projecting yourselves as charity workers and giving back and blah, 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 that this could never have happened to you, yada, yada, yada. But what's horrible is that those individuals never truly got justice. Instead, their stories were manipulated, changed, and disregarded by the public because of somebody like Ivy Lee. Maybe Ivy Lee at the time felt like he was doing something prophetic in his own right. That maybe he believed that his client didn't do such a thing. Regardless, what Ivy Lee ended up doing was spinning all of the truth of the matter into something that was about the Rockefellers being positive individuals, being people that would never do such a thing, that care more about charity, obviously, than killing children and wives and their workers. What do those workers have? They only had their wives and their children and those around them. And they're gone. And Rockefeller gets to save his reputation because he has somebody like Ivy Lee. So there is nuance there. It's not that Ivy Lee is necessarily this big evil villain, but Ivy Lee definitely did something that altered the truth, possibly, of the events that actually took place for his client's sake, who he is making money off of. And I love that, you know, these lawyers and these crisis managers and all of them, they'll be like, oh, this person's biased, this person's biased, your bias. You know, to be honest, a good lawyer or a good person in your corner is somebody who is not biased, who will tell you when you are fucking up, etc. But most of these people are biased. They're there to make money off of their client, get them out of their mess. And if they get their client out of their mess, guess what? They get referred to the next person in a crisis by that person that potentially did something very wrong, potentially very harmful. That person now refers them to the next one. And these people are making millions of dollars a year off of people that have potentially harmed people. And they've gotten really good at it. Like very good at it. They've gotten spectacular at it. And now with the internet, there is a tool at their disposal that Ivy Lee couldn't even dream of. Ivy Lee had to go to legacy media, shake hands with the devil, you know, go to a journalist, go to the owner of whatever, CBS. I'm just making up ID, you know, whatever. Shake hands with this person, go to dinner, go to lunch, do this. They still do that, by the way. They definitely still do that. They still network. But the difference is now with the internet, they can just sign on, make an anonymous account, get a bunch of bots, get a bot farm firm, and start sending out a message that makes you think that their client is telling the truth. Now they don't have to pull a Rockefeller. They just need to turn on their iPhone. And they can absolutely obliterate the truth. I mean, it is a very scary thought. And that's why when I was thinking about the Blake Lively and the Justin Baldoni story, they want you. Their goal, by the way, I've learned this, and trust my word for this. Trust my word for this. They want you to be focused on just the people and team pick and pick teams. That gets them bonuses. That gets them more referrals. You're just helping them. What you're not doing with that is changing the system that is allowing this type of behavior to be rewarded. They use us, the average person on the internet, as pawns for their own referrals to make millions and millions of dollars off of you posting something on behalf of their client. They'll be like, look how many comments I got that were real. Believing this message that we're spewing to the masses. And they count on you. They count on you. It's a very, very, very dangerous market. Same for politics. And that's where it stems from. This idea of crisis management. Like I said in the beginning, this is for royalty. This is for corporation owners. This is for politicians. And now it's Hollywood. Hollywood is making so much money that now they can get those same people. And for example, let me show you. Right? So the crisis manager for Justin Baldoni, hold on a second. Let me pull this up real quick. Where are you? God, the tabs. Does anyone else have so many tabs where they're like, what are even my tabs at this point? What are they? There are so many. Okay, here it is. Okay. You see this here? What does it say? The PR guru behind Trump's mouthpieces speaks. This person right here is Matthew Hilzick. He is a major crisis manager. Remember his name because, to be honest with you, I guess he kind of sometimes wants you to remember his name because articles are constantly leaking about him representing people like Mr. Beast, right? How do you think these things leak? How do people all of a sudden know that Matthew is the crisis manager for Mr. Beast? He obviously does want people to know, in my opinion, but remember him. Now, again, this is not to say that this guy's one big evil villain, because, for example, he does help people, I've seen in articles, that are not in these positions, and he'll do pro bono things for people that are on the right side of history. Everyone is extremely complex, but we cannot disregard, obviously, what he has done. And he has worked with Harvey Weinstein. And when it comes to Melissa Nathan, who was Justin Baldoni's crisis manager, she worked. Where is she? Here. Here's Melissa Nathan. She was the executive vice president at Hilzick's Strategies. So Matthew was almost like a mentor of sorts. He was a mentor for someone like Melissa Nathan. And I'm sure someone like Matthew has fucking seen it all, right? If you've been in this industry with this many individuals with privilege, money, disregard for humanity, you're going to see it all. You're probably going to see sometimes your clients being absolutely innocent when maybe you even thought they were guilty, or vice versa. Of course. But regardless, we have to remember what his job is. And his job is to carve out things that don't necessarily make his client be put in the best light. Like Tony with Diplo and Pitchfork. For example, there was an individual in the Pitchfork story, a girl by the name of Gabby, who Diplo was talking to, allegedly. There's screenshots of this though, right? But allegedly. And she was 15, and he was harding that. Diplo was harding that she was 15, allegedly, in these screenshots. And guess who Diplo's lawyer is? Brian Friedman. Brian Friedman, who's Justin Baldoni's, this, that, they're all connected because it is a small little circle of people. But Gabby's story didn't make it in Pitchfork. Why? Why didn't Gabby's story make it in Pitchfork? I'll let the chat go for that. Do we think that possibly Tony had something to do with that? Or his co-workers at Edendale Strategies? Do 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 do. You know, wasn't there. But what I've heard isn't good. And because of that, Shelly's story, for example, when it came to Diplo, ended up being alone and isolated. And then it looks like it was just one person coming forward, right? And so as much as these individuals that are these crisis managers think they're being helpers, really though, what are they exactly helping and for what? Of course, when somebody's in a bad situation, a human being is going to tend to want to help them. But I think where it becomes a problem is if you are starting to use that power to distort the truth or carve out parts of the truth to fit the narrative for your client. Your client shouldn't need that. Your client shouldn't need you if they're telling the truth, really, at the end of the day. But I get why there is an industry for that. But carving out parts of the truth is, you know what that is? A cheater. Somebody who cheats. It's like, why not leave it all in? If you have nothing to hide, right? Leave it all in, or prove that you didn't do that so that that gets included in the article, which is, you know, for example, what I was doing when it came to Cat 10 barge. I handed over all of the evidence to show that that was not the case. I didn't have a crisis manager. I had the truth on my side. And obviously, look what happened. Regardless of showing that truth, somebody else carved out parts of it for their own personal narrative. And they weren't a crisis manager, which is why this all connects to one another. We're all starting to do that in some way. I think it's because we've gotten so used to seeing parts of the truth for so long that when we see the whole truth, we don't even know what to do with it. We don't know how to manage it. We don't understand how to hold that type of responsibility. And that goes for everyone. So Melissa Nathan. So Melissa Nathan goes from Hilzik Strategies, and then she ends up working at this place, TAG. TAG, the agency group PR. Let's read a little bit about it. The agency group PR LLC redefines the rules of reputation of reputation management. Wait, you guys, what's wild about this though? So we all know the word PR. We all know the term public relations. You know who coined that phrase and why now it's public relations? Edward Bernays. Edward Bernays, who is the nephew of Sigmund Freud. Let me pull him up right here for you guys. Let me show you who he is. This is Edward Bernays, okay? So he was the nephew of Sigmund Freud. And when propaganda obviously started getting such a bad reputation because of Germany, this guy thinks, well, manipulation isn't that bad. I don't necessarily trust people when it comes to their decision making. What is a democracy if the people who are deciding things don't know what to decide? Or if I don't trust them to decide the right thing? So he still believed in propaganda, but he knew that propaganda was a tarnished term. So he came up with PR. Propaganda evolved into public relations. So I think it's kind of funny because if we saw these individuals who have these PR firms, instead of being called PR strategist and PR agent, if they were propaganda agents, we might go, I don't know. You might just go like, well, that kind of changes things. He really helped with this rebranding. He even took propaganda as a crisis in a lot of ways, if you think about it. Propaganda was in this crisis. And then he was like, let's rebrand that. Let's turn it into something good, something that's more easily digestible. And it turns into PR, into public relations. So really, I mean, say you guys are going to have your own opinion on this, but propaganda, public relations, propaganda, public relations. It seems like it's still kind of one and the same. It still seems like it's one and the same. Okay, so let's get back to TAG here. So this was the crisis management PR. So imagine it was the agency group propaganda TAG. Like, what would that make you feel like if you saw that versus public relations? Because it's really interesting to think about that even what we're looking at, this person's job has been rebranded. This person's job has already gone through its own crisis, a terrible one. Rightfully so. Propaganda is fucking terrible. And it got rebranded. And now this person's job is to work for that. So Our team of crisis specialists and communications experts partner with world-class artists, leaders of industry, innovators, and global brands to create sustainable and impactful solutions. TAG services individuals, corporations, studios, labels, law firms, and small businesses across the key sectors of power, including entertainment industry, politics, and philanthropy. So even nonprofits use these people, by the way. Sharing years of success behind some of the most noteworthy, high-profile crisis and litigation events in recent history, we work seamlessly alongside renowned industry litigators and their teams. You see this? So it's a team. It's not like they work necessarily even just with that client, like just Justin Baldoni, right? They're working with Justin Baldoni's legal team, which would be, for in this example, Brian fucking Friedman. Our decades of experience grant us a unique understanding and appreciation of the evolving media and digital landscape, which, by the way, did we see the contract that TAG gave Justin Baldoni, that Blake Lively, I mean, this is all alleged, but this is within the court filings, gave to Justin Baldoni, and what that contract entailed when it came to Reddit and all these different things? Evolving media and digital landscape that's accompanied by trusted relationships with all forms of media on a global, national, and local scale. So basically what they're saying here, in my opinion, is if they're saying they're buddies with people, okay? They're buddies with people maybe at New York Times. They have good working relationships with people at maybe even TMZ. You know, they're letting you know that they have actual relationships, good standing ones, with people that you would want to write an article on your side, or to at least be more neutral when it came to the topics. That they can just call or go to lunch with this person. It's not even just an email, right? This will end up being a phone call, a lunch, a relationship with the person who's writing an article about your client. At TAG, it's more than just creating a powerful narrative. It is knowing how to navigate that narrative towards continued success and a lasting legacy. Sounds really promising. If I was in a fucking crisis and I read this, I might go, help me. I'm calling this person. And remember, these lawyers, right? They give their clients multiple options. So, you know, this is just an example. Like, let's just give a hypothetical for someone like Justin Baldoni. Brian Friedman could, you know, be like, here's TAG, here's Matthew Hilzick, you know, here's Hope, here's Edendale Strategies, and then they choose which person is right, and also which person's available for them to hire. Everyone following? I know this is a lot to cover in such a compact moment in time, but hopefully we're all following here. And again, a lot of money these people make when it comes to helping these people out of their crisis. Okay. But I think the biggest issue for me personally is how TAG agency was speaking to Justin Baldoni. And I think also maybe just merely stupidity. And I'm sure they learned a very great lesson here. And I know that Brian Friedman, you know, talks a lot about, but look, it was cherry picked. Okay, whatever, for sure. It was cherry picked. It didn't show that there was other things that were part of that conversation that showed that they didn't participate in this and X and Y, and there was jokes here and it wasn't necessarily serious here. Regardless, Brian, the language is poor. The language is disrespectful. The language is a little bit alarming when it comes to your clients. And this is just my personal opinion. Regardless of, I'm not going to fall for your team Baldoni, your team Blake Lively bullshit. I'm going to look at what's fucking happening in this industry you're working in and how it's operating with no rail guards. It's just running amok. And it showed how far it was running amok when you read the messages that these people felt like they could just message their client. I think it was, in my personal opinion, it feels unprofessional. Felt too personal. And there were things that were mentioned here that I think are just ridiculous. So let's look at just what Blake Lively, right? And always, again, there's going to be people here in the chat. Team Blake, Team Justin, listen. Team the truth, okay, in here. Respect each other's opinions. This is not about overriding that aspect. I really want to shine a light on the systemic issues here and these corporate structures that are running amok without any type of accountability themselves. And they want us to get distracted on I'm team this person and I'm team that person. So let's read so Jennifer Abel messages this to Melissa Nathan, who is obviously the person who is in charge of Tag Agency and worked at Matthew Hilzick's crisis management firm before this. You can, of course, do that, but I do think he needs to know. I'm going to confidentially send you something. He's texting me and what was it, Jamie on the side, just to arm you before this call. I think you guys need to be tough and show the strength of what you guys can do in these scenarios. He wants to feel like she can be burned. I'm sorry, what, Jennifer? I know, listen, Brian, I've watched the Megyn Kelly, I've watched this, I've watched that, and I'm not even saying anything about your client, okay? I'm just talking about this mess. Who is typing this? Who's throwing her own client under the bus like this? Or it seems like. He wants to feel like she can be burned. This doesn't sound like professional speak. Professional language. It feels the language, and I'm not saying, again, remember intention versus impact. I'm not saying the intention here was X, Y, and Z, but the impact of those words makes it feel vengeful. How it looks, and sure, this is cherry picked, right? In the sense of like, we're not seeing the entire conversation for sure. But to be honest with you, dude, sure, I obviously always want to see everything. I'm at this point in my life. I do want to see fucking everything, okay? But at the same time, these words are not good. It's a crisis. It's the crisis for the crisis management. I wonder if the crisis management got another crisis management to handle their crisis. Like, this is a crisis. Are they handling their own crisis? Because it's just not good. And then now Melissa is responding to Jennifer, and she goes, of course. But, when we send over documents, we can't send over the work we will or could do because that could get us in a lot of trouble. Bro. Guys. Huh? What does that mean? And sure, it can mean a bunch of different things. What kind of trouble? Could mean a couple different things. But you're saying you can't send over the work we will or could do because that could get us in a lot of trouble. What kind of trouble? What is the work you could and could not, you could and couldn't do? And why would it possibly get you in a lot of trouble? And you don't even say just trouble, you say a lot of trouble. What is the trouble? Now, listen, I'm going to tell you something. With the Justin Baldoni and the Blake Lively thing, I'm not landing on a complete answer here. What happened, what didn't. Okay? Regardless of that fact. This is an example, though, of what the average survivor is going through in regards to coming forward about someone in a powerful position. So looking at this is very important. What I must say about Blake Lively, regardless of my own hurt about the playlist and my abuser's music in there, I must give her a tip of the hat for at least trying to draw some attention to an industry that, in my opinion, seems to be lacking a little bit of morals here. or being a little bit reckless with their language and their behavior. Possibly. And I think the more that we have attention around the systemic issue versus the he said, she said, this person, I love this person in this film, she's amazing, he's amazing, whatever, the greater chance that we're going to change something. Okay, so Melissa then goes, we can't write it down to him. We can't write, we will destroy her. We will go to this. We will do this. We will do this. We will do this. Wait, we can't write, we will destroy her. Why are you wanting to write that? And it also, it makes me just question, like, was Justin wanting you to write something like that? To destroy her? And listen, people are human, right? So I'm trying to just bend and be flexible with my mind. Sometimes when someone is being harmed, let's say we play the hypothetical, the team Baldoni side for a second here. And this person is getting ruined by this woman's allegations, and all these things are happening to him, and it's stressful, and he's human, and he's triggered, and he's going through this, and he has kids, and and maybe he's like, I want to destroy her. I can't believe she's doing this. I'm sure it's not the first time someone in an angry position, said something they regret. But the way that they're talking to one another is feeling like it just feels a little too close for comfort with that anger. And what does it mean? And what could it do? And what are you doing? Trying to be very level-headed here. Okay. So then she goes, he has to look at it as an information document for us to be armed with. That's all. Imagine if a document saying all the things that he wants ends up in the wrong hands. I'm sorry. Cherry pick you will, but like, this is wild language. Just in my personal opinion, it's like, if it ends up in the wrong hands, what he's wanting to do, that it would be terrible for what? His reputation? It's just so irresponsible, in my opinion, when it comes, like, these people are paid so much money a month, and like, look at this conversation. So in my opinion, I'd be so pissed I paid this money. I would be like, I paid this money for this to end up in a lawsuit. It's expensive. And then this ends up in a lawsuit, this conversation. You're like, what? Okay, let's continue. Miss Nathan followed this by assuring Miss Abel, we can bury anyone, but I can't write that to him. Here it is. Melissa Nathan to Jennifer. We can bury anyone, but I can't write that to him. I will. I'll be very tough. So like, it seems like, they're like dealing with this client who really wants something done. They're wanting X, Y, and Z. They're trying to figure out how to, like, I guess, tell him what they can do without telling him what they can do. And again, this is a business. There's also a very business conversation that they're having where they're like, we got a client here that's wanting X, Y, and Z. How are we going to tell them that we can actually provide that? And make whatever, what was it, $100,000 or something a month? I can't remember, but it's something like that. I'm pretty sure. I mean, Blake could have revealed Justin's harassment and the crisis management about him before she invited him to her and Ryan's house. Yeah. And here's the thing. Coulda, woulda, shoulda. right? And I always like to be a little bit avoidant of, not avoidant, that's not the right term, but a little bit careful when we're like, well, why didn't this person do this when they could have? And when it comes for a lot of survivors, they have their own alternative, you know, they have their own reasons maybe. Maybe some people also think they can fix it. And that having a conversation, for example, will change their behavior. And again, this is, I'm really not a team Baldoni or a team Blake Lively here. I'm just talking as a person in the middle, where I have seen a lot of survivors have conversations with their abusers, right? And they think they can fix it. They don't think they have to go public. And you have to remind yourself also that these are very public figures. And so anything they say or do, it's going to end up everywhere. And do you want that? You know, what's the motive? So I can at least understand that from a neutral perspective. I think $100,000. It was $90K for 3 months. Damn. You guys, $90K for, imagine making $90K in 3 months. And you're just texting about burying somebody or not, or what you can say, or are you going to, or... A few days later, on August 5th, 2024, Mr. Baldoni set the narrative for the social media campaign, sending Miss Abel a screenshot of a thread on X that accused another female celebrity of bullying women. Mr. Baldoni stated, "This is what we would need." Okay, so this is kind of infamous, right? He sends them Hailey Bieber. Leave them out of here. Okay, Hailey Bieber's history of bullying many women, and not just Selena Gomez. What does it say? Throughout the years. So here, this is what we would need. I don't know, guys. Like, this is just weird, though, regardless. You know, it's like, these are not conversations. This is a crisis. The crisis management gives them a crisis. But like, this is more crisis than anything else right now. This is not good per se, right? We can all agree, like, this is what we would need. Doesn't sound good, especially when it comes to, because Blake's a bully. Right. And that could be somebody's opinion. Blake could be not a good person. Justin Baldoni could be not a good person. But listen to how the industry is operating. This is what's really important. We have to take out our allegiances to sometimes even our own opinions about somebody. And we have to look at the bigger picture, the dynamic that is taking place, which is somebody is showing somebody how to strategize a narrative. I mean, that's what it's looking like, right? This is what the cherry picking is revealing here, is that someone is telling somebody how to strategize this crisis this person is in and what they're going to need to get out of it. And that's why I think it's really important for us to really, at least here, is to have our opinions about the people for sure. And I'm pretty neutral on this. I'm catching up and I don't know. But what I do see is something I grew up in, and that I have also a lot of firsthand knowledge when it comes to this shit. And this is the problem, though. There is a problem that is greater than Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively. There is a problem within this entertainment industry when it comes to what these people can afford and what they can do with information, and how they can actually... And this is not specifically about Justin Baldoni. I'm not saying this even directed at Justin Baldoni. I'm talking about the industry that he is having a communication with, who he's talking to. What this industry does is, for example, from what even I've seen, is carve someone's story out of an article. And so you're only seeing pieces of the truth. And that's what's really important for us to talk about, because then when we're digesting these celebrity, high profile, crises, that we can go, listen, someone else is behind how we're reading it. We're not just reading it the way that it is. there are many things. There's a back and forth from the editor to the legal team, to the crisis manager, to the lawyer, to the client, to the this, the bang, the bang, the bang, the bang. Before that article comes out, it's sometimes months and months and months and months of this back and forth with like many, many people who are afraid to get sued, being bullied, this, that. So that when we look at information, we're at least allowing ourselves to go, hey, this might not necessarily be all the truth here. This is some of it. And there is an industry behind how we are perceiving this information. There are people that get paid $90K 3 months for you to see something sometimes a specific way, or to make sure that it doesn't damage their client's reputation further. It's the neutral aspect of it. Okay. Alrighty, here. What do we got? Okay. So here, we got more messages. On August 10th, the day after the release of the film, Miss Nathan's team reported that they had started to see a shift on social, due largely to Jed and his team's efforts to shift the narrative against Miss Lively. Jennifer Abel. Hi, team. So far, extremely limited pickup on Daily Mail or Page 6. We'll continue to keep an eye out and send pieces as needed, but so far, it's been steady coverage on pure speculation. We've also started to see a shift on social, due largely to Jed and his team's efforts to shift the narrative towards shining a spotlight on Blake and Ryan. Again, we'll continue to send links and screenshots, but wanted to send an update in the meantime. Now, let's put Justin Baldoni out of this for a second. Let's just put him out of it for a second. Imagine this was Harvey Weinstein, though, okay? Maybe somebody, or P. Diddy, or maybe somebody that you don't have an allegiance to in any type of way. You're like, oh, you're at least seeing, though, a little bit how this industry is working. Like, they're keeping them updated. They're telling them what articles are coming out. They're talking about the narrative shifting that somebody on their team is doing. And regardless if it's not about being malicious. It's their job here of shifting the narrative over here. But what are the implications of something like that if it was somebody that you don't have an allegiance to? That's why I like to focus on these. I like to focus on the businesses. I like to focus on these institutions, because when they run amok, you know, we got to know about it. That same day, Miss Nathan noted that as part of this shift, the majority of socials are so pro-Justin, and I don't even agree with half of them. Lol. See what I mean, though? Listen, I'm going to tell you guys something real quick. A little scoop. They don't care that much about the clients. Not Inside Scoop in there. Inside Scoop in general. They don't care that much about the fucking client. Okay? It's not, it's not like, oh, they have this allegiance to their client. They have their own opinions of the client. And then they have a job to do, right? These people. It's another day at the office. Another day of making $90,000 in 3 months. And they have a bunch of them maybe at the same time that they're juggling. And it's like the majority of social are so pro-Justin, and I don't even agree with half of them. I mean, is that not wild? I'm just reading the message. And again, somebody could then come and change the narrative on these messages. He doesn't realize how lucky he is right now. We need to press on him just how fucking lucky. What does that mean? I mean, what does that mean? I mean, that's a true question. He doesn't realize how lucky he is right now. We need to press on him just how fucking lucky. Now I can look at this a few ways. I can be like, oh, he doesn't realize how lucky because he has... let's say we're Team Baldoni, right? And we're looking at this as an innocent person who's being attacked about something. Then he doesn't realize how lucky he is. He's going up against a very powerful person. right? Someone like Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds. And he's going to need a huge team possibly going up against power like that. So we can look at it like that. We can go, oh, he doesn't realize how lucky he is to have a team. But we need to press on him just how fucking lucky. It's starting to feel like, if for me personally, it just feels like somebody who's saying he's not appreciating or something how lucky he actually is with these people. You know, maybe it looks like a little bit of a vent conversation. Now I'm trying to take it out of the teams aspect, like Team Baldoni, Team Blake Lively. Maybe there's frustration. I don't know. The whispering in the ear, the actual, we can't say it, connotations like Jesus fucking Christ, other members feeling uncomfortable watching it. I mean, there is just so much. So again, if this was cherry picked, right, we can go, this is what the media could be saying. This is what we're hearing, the whispers of something. And these are big, serious allegations. This is a lot. So it's not necessarily saying this person did this thing. It does clarify that these are the whispering in the ear of this and that, and by who we don't know. But it seems like there is obviously some pressure that this company is dealing with. This went so well, it was genius. So, okay, we have the 4 majors standing down on HR complaint. Jen, this went so well. I am fucking dying. I have to call you later in a bit and tell you how this went. It was genius. So, okay, we have the 4 majors standing down on HR complaint. I think we are fine on that bit. Now that's, and now this is the big spectacle though right here, is the wow, you really outdid yourself with this piece. And Miss Nathan replied, that's why you hired me, right? I'm the best. And then we find out that in the bigger scope of the conversation, that it was more of a joke, that they didn't necessarily have anything to do with this piece. Or at least that's what I saw online. Someone can correct me in the comments section, but I'm pretty sure that when this was isolated, it looked like X, Y, and Z, and then we saw the rest of it, and it was more like that they didn't have anything to do with it. It was being sarcastic and funny about her hiring the best, etc. I can't name a single creator that is pro Blake. That's how I know she is right. I don't care. It's my opinion. You have every right to that opinion. You have every right to that opinion. And I agree. I think there is something weird going on. And something that's really important is talking about predatory behavior, right? And I do believe, regardless of Melissa and Matthew and all these different people, their personal intentions versus their impact, right? What their intention is when it comes to getting into an industry like this. In my opinion, this industry still preys on certain stigmas. It can prey on misinformation. It can prey on someone's lack of knowledge about a situation. It can prey on somebody's triggers around a certain topic. And regardless, I still feel like there's predation in these types of industries. And I'm not saying that the people that are involved in these industries have that type of intention. But I still think a little bit of the playbook, so to speak, has to do with psychology and has to do with navigating people's minds and opinions. And how do you do that? How do you do that? Other than looking at certain things, obviously, that are trending, or how millennials operate, or maybe what would that person's enemy be like if fueled. And when it comes to women, for example, it's always and always and always going to be misogyny. It's always going to be that the woman, regardless if she, you know, it was interesting about Blake Lively is usually when a survivor is coming forward, a reported survivor is coming forward against somebody, it's that they want money. They want something out of them. And then when Blake Lively was coming forward about the allegations against Justin Baldoni, you know, she doesn't need necessarily, obviously, any type of money from him. But it still came back to, what does she want? What is what is she? Is she vengeful? Is she a bitch? Was she not nice to somebody a few years ago? Let's point that out. You know, and it just comes back always to when a woman isn't likable, she's usually not believed. And again, this is not about me saying I'm pro Blake Lively. It's just what I've learned as a survivor coming forward, and what I've seen other survivors go through is that we just have to be likable. We have to be palpable. That's a word. for people to believe us. And, you know, God forbid we're not a person that anyone likes, then there is going to be a problem with people necessarily believing you. Because they're like, ugh, that rubbed me the wrong way. And I already think this person's kind of like an asshole. And so I'm not going to necessarily think that what they're saying is true because I don't trust them now because I saw this interview, for example, where she's like a total unlikable person. And I wouldn't hang with this person. And then you have your internalized misogyny as well, kicking into full gear, which is like, we are more graceful towards unlikable men than we are towards unlikable women. And this is not to defend Blake Lively in the light of just pushing an agenda of misogyny to prove her innocence about going up against Justin Baldoni. I'm just saying it is something that an industry can prey on to get people kicked into full gear, to go in the direction that they're getting paid for it to go in that direction, if you know what I mean, right? We have to always remember that whether we like it or not, we are prey, all of us, to so many different corporate greed, corporate corruption, corporate manipulation, since we were babies, dude. And Edward Bernays specifically thought that was a good thing. He had good intentions with that he thought he was helping us make better decisions, that if we were happier as consumers, that we would make better choices. We are prey to corporate structures. Regardless of Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni, there is a machine at hand that has its own personal agenda. And I'm going to tell you right now, it's not even the agenda of Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively's dispute. It also has to do with engagement, keeping us online, commenting. Who makes money off of that? Who makes money off of us fighting with one another? These fucking tech bros, dude. Keep us on our phones, hating one another. Cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. All we get from it is feeling like shit, or feeling like we're right for half a second and feeling powerful, dominating, or feeling sad, feeling bullied, while these corporate bros, these tech bros, are making billions of dollars off of it. So even in the Explore page, they're going to push these types of topics because they know it's going to get engagement. And what happens with engagement? They're able to show these ad companies, also predation, also predatory. They're able to go over to an ad, and be like, look how much engagement we're getting over here this month. I'm going to charge you a lot more monthly for your ad to be on my app. It's a machine. And everybody's playing their part in it. And I know we want to feel powerful sometimes, thinking we know how a situation played out in regards to somebody like Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni, and we want to feel like we care about something, and we do. But at the end of the day, what's really important, and I really do still think this, and this is why ePredators began, is the institutions are what really needs to change. And they love to distract us with people that we love or hate. They like to prey on our misogyny, our biased opinions about things, and make money off of that. Divide and conquer, divide and conquer, divide and conquer, cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. And as long as we're stuck in this cycle of you versus me, we're not going to change the system that keeps getting us into the conversation that makes us you versus me. You know? Here, what does it say? Astro Girl, you've dealt with that yourself, defending your character against people that slandered you, trying to make you an unlikable personality. Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Astro Girl. Thank you for that support. I did. I've seen it also in my, I don't want to make it about me, but I have seen it. I have seen my own personal experience of this, specifically with the Nickelodeon t-shirts. Specifically with that was really where I saw the like, whoa, right? But I when you go up against the system, and I was a little bit naive about this, I have to understand that the system's going to go up against me, right? And the typical strategy of this always is to make it about this person to person. And I really do believe that's why it takes a lot longer for so many major things to change, is because I don't want to say we waste time, because I don't want anyone to feel activated by that. But we spend a little too much time on one another when it comes to disputes and fighting than we do reading and researching and educating and unlearning when it comes to these systems that are preying on us all. And we all have a very common, and I hate to use this word, but it will be the most easy to communicate, enemy. We all have a common enemy. We all have somebody, I believe, something that we are all being exploited by, and that is corporate greed and corporate corruption. And we're all struggling in it. And then I think a lot of our relief of it is sometimes to feel like you know something more than another person online. Like there's a relief there, catharsis. I really believe that we get a cathartic feeling when we are stating our opinions against somebody that we disagree with. And we feel like we did something that day. But all I know from that, and even from my own doing of that, I've learned the most change came from when I was going after the systems. Like when I went after Warner Music, right? And to get that CEO to step down. He did end up stepping down. Took 2 protests, but he ended up stepping down earlier. And it worked, right? It took 2 protests, and I'm sure they were laughing at me up there, but instead of fighting amongst the people that were against what I was doing, I stayed very focused on the agenda at hand. And I think we all need to collectively stay a little bit more focused on the agenda at hand, because I think their biggest fear is us together. And I don't even mean just survivorhood. I mean just people in general together. Like if we were able to actually have better conflict resolution and still focus our energy towards changing what it is that's inflicting pain upon us, that we can all agree upon, the mountains we would fucking move, man. I mean, the mountains we would eventually move. And so, okay, guys, by the way, I have to pick up. So now this is my new mom life with my daughter in school. I have to pick up my daughter at school, but I'm going to do a part 2 of this because I have 10 more tabs that I want to go through when it comes to the crisis managers and go a little bit deeper, because I know that we were only able to look at a lot of Blake Lively's part of her complaint. And don't worry, I want to also look at what was the counter so that we can have a healthy conversation around that and discuss, because I think it's really important, because looking at it from both sides gives us a way better, clearer view of what's actually happening there so that we can do something about it. But I appreciate you guys being here and being part of this evolution. Okay. Just this metamorphosis. And it just really, really, really means a lot. And I really can't say that enough. And cheers to the dreamers. Cheers to the dreamers who get made fun of. And who get disregarded. But usually at the end of the day, they're the ones creating the future. So maybe we're not seeing it now, but someone might live in our dream in the future. And that's all that counts. So I'll be back. I'll do a part 2 on this. We'll go a little bit deeper into Justin Baldoni and now his take on her lawsuit and what she cherry picked when it came to what he said she cherry picked. And we'll start balancing the scales and looking at a little bit more of a broader scope. But anyways, you guys are awesome. Have a beautiful, beautiful night, and be kind to one another. Be kind to yourself. And I will see you on Friday. I'll be live on Friday, and we'll continue the conversation. Have a beautiful, beautiful night. Bye, you guys.